Welcome back to M.T.Pockets.
Yeah.
Good to be back again.
Every other night I take a walk. Every other night I go outside. Would you wanna take a walk with me? If you are going to come along, is there any place you want to be? Maybe we can go and see a show. Go to the movies, go to the movies, go to the movies. See all of the big names on the screen, Lee and Grant and every scene. Everybody wants to be up there. Get some popcorn and a drink. Go right back and get your seat. What a way to thrill the day. Go to the movies, go to the movies, go to the movies. If you are going to come along, is there any place you want to be? Maybe we can go and see a show. Go to the movies, 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 go to the movies.
I had decided to do a summer series at the center, and it was going to be this avant-garde, really challenging things, new and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, funding was cut. And so I turned to Joel, who is always the one I turn to when I don't have any money and I need something interesting.
The movie show started as an outdoor movie show, the Escape Drive-In, but that just got too out of control, and I just couldn't manage it because it was just one person and some my friends helping me put this together. And then for the next 3 years, I showed the films. It became M.T.Pockets at the Free State Brewery. I did that for 3 years, 3 summers there. They built a roof over it, and they actually turned it into a nice place, and they included the movie projection plan so I could still show movies. There'd just be this nice movie on the wall with no one watching it, you know. I understand that, you know, that wasn't what the place was for. So that kind of dried out, and once that happened, Charlotte became the producing director of the Wichita Center for the Arts.
And so we kind of kept the money really low, so we never really paid Joel very much, but, you know, because I'm his sister, you know, what could he do? Complain to me?
I do remember I was immediately in love with the project. It seemed to me to combine a great many things. Number one, nostalgia. Those of us who were lucky enough to be around, to be going to school when those educational shorts were shown to us in a serious vein, it brought memories back, which were, in my case, of course, extremely fragmentary. But it did suggest a time that was a little less enlightened even than Kansas is now. And it's always good to know there was such a time.
I told a friend in California about this, and she says, it sounds like something that could only come from Berkeley. And I said, well, no, Joel's a Kansas native. He comes from Wichita.
Moving the show inside into an auditorium for me was fantastic. I didn't have to deal with the weather. It didn't rain. It was incredible. And I just had, well, free reign over a theater.
It seemed pretty formal compared to the movie shows here in Lawrence, because it's homespun. I mean, it's in people's yards, or it's in our yard, or it's out in the country, and there's all kinds of weird things going on, and just has a completely different feel. The center shows are ticketed, and it seems more formal.
Being introduced to the Sanderson clan when I met Charla, the M.T.Pockets was sort of my introduction to Joel, and you know, I immediately wondered what the hell I was getting into.
There was the atmosphere in the audience who came there to snicker and sneer and feel superior and have a good time. There was a musical interlude. You didn't have to keep quiet, and if you shrieked and hollered and gripe. There wasn't a general feeling you were ruining anything. It was put together to hoot and holler and screech and yell at. The audience was almost as much part of the show as the film was, although I never did agree with those who felt the audience was more of the show than the film was. I always thought the film was the main thing.
It had a childlike quality and an innocence to it that was great, yet kind of a tongue-in-cheek wink behind the scenes.
The most amazing thing was knowing my brother, who is usually kind of shy in front of a crowd, or, you know, that sort of thing. You got to get to know him a little bit more before you find his real humor. Would be the amazing transformation from calm, mild-mannered Joel to this outrageous goofball on the stage who told great jokes.
The first Scottby Drive-Ins, you didn't see me. I hosted it from a microphone. I'd plug in a mic to the projector and you never saw me. Well, one night the mic broke and I had to go out in front of the audience. And I was just a mess. It was a nightmare for me.
Joel would be just beside himself trying to get this whole thing put together. It would just be like, Joel, chill out. It's just supposed to be a relaxed, calm evening. Joel would just be like on the ceiling, crazed, nervous.
When you go to a party, there's always that one person who wears a lampshade on his head, and that's usually me. So if you're hosting a show, it helps to have something to remove that person from being that person. So it allows me to do anything then, because if I'm wearing a washing machine packing ring on my head or a drink rack for glasses, I wore that on my head a lot. It just makes me so ridiculous that you know, anything can happen.
I'm your fairy godmother. Sure. You don't believe me? Well, that's up to you.
The films were things that you probably would never see, but they were also things that you probably wouldn't go out of your way to see as themselves, put together as a program that made it really entertaining.
The trouble with showing films at the center is it's like there's a reverence there for the films, which you should have. But that's the last thing I wanted was reverence.
There was a certain amount of wit in the juxtaposition of shots sometimes, and sometimes not. I'm sure Mr. Sanderson is willing to admit that there were occasions when there was not much wit in the juxtapositions, but sometimes they were really quite clever.
The way I got all these films is in the 80s, film libraries and collections were going to that new thing, video, and they couldn't throw away the film fast enough, and I became the guy in the Midwest region who would come and pick it up for free. Can you believe it?
There's now a little tiny cubby, which I kind of refer to in my head as the lab, where you disappear to. And it's always interesting to see what that looks like when it's actually on the big screen.
One of the things I like to do is take a bad feature film and cut it down to 20 minutes and then intercut stuff in between the giant plot holes. Like, say you want to get rid of a character. If you get rid of that one character, that saves you 40 minutes of film right there. So you cut away to something totally unrelated and people are distracted. So when you come back in, that character is just gone for the rest of the film. They never notice.
I really enjoy the movies. Sometimes they've made me recall my own youth watching the films in school. Oftentimes, though, they were even before my time. So it was fun, very nostalgic.
The beauty of the films is that if you mix 3 or 4 of them together, one film will ask a question and the other film will answer in a totally irrelevant answer.
Just hilarious stuff gets cut into these, really, really bad movies, but there's always sort of a fun little cut in of something that's totally, seemingly unrelated, but is.
What's the matter, Tony? What's the matter? I darted after them. I wanted to gobble them up as quickly as I could.
And that was always, I think, sort of the spice that sort of kept them going.
You enjoyed a feeling of superiority, not to Mr. Sanderson, but to the people who made this original footage, because you know that you would never have made anything quite as stupid especially those educational things, and in a good many cases, nothing as stupid as some of the commercial stuff either.
So yes, I've been called a film preservationist and a film historian, but I'm really a film butcher.
All those fellas skip ahead. Most of you know what this means. That this is the interactive portion of the show where I throw stuff at you.
Throwing prizes came about just because to break that barrier, to get the audience involved, because if something's flying at your face, you're going to interact quickly.
Sitting in the audience is great because I think at the very first or towards the middle of the show, when you throw stuff out to the audience, and to see these middle 30 and 40 something people run and jump over aisles of chairs to get little trinkets that you would find in a gumball machine for $1, and that would be overpaying for it. But to see these people run down the aisles and kill themselves to get these little plastic eyeballs or plastic skeletons or something like that is just unreal.
I do sometimes think that Joel needs to work on his delivery. As a critic, that was very important to me. The delivery, no, I mean of the candies and the stuff that he threw. I always sat in the back and it never reached me, rarely. So he needs to get into the pitching cage and get some arc.
His aim is not that great. And we had these big paintings that are worth tons of money, burger sansanes, and a few of the hard items were going awfully close to the paintings, and I could just see one going through or putting someone's eye out.
You know, you always said, you know, if you want prizes, sit towards the front, because you never did really throw them that far. And the people sit in the back, you know, would always say, me, but, you know, well, you know, we're not talking about, you know, Jose Casinco here, you know, throwing a baseball.
Which fingers? They're back.
Who knew which fingers could bring so much joy to people's lives?
Charlotte, there's mice in the theater.
And we talked about it, and I said, let's do some soft stuff and not some hard things. Well, of course, Joel made that into a sort of a big thing about, he had a little dial-o-meter of hard to soft or poke your eye out or not.
M.T.Pockets, flying price, safety meter. So you will know what's coming and how dangerous it is. Down here we have things that are maybe the equivalent of flying Kleenex. Moves on up to flying toilet paper, spoons, forks, then it gets to the dangerous end. Screwdrivers, knives, scissors.
I always thought it was funny when people would get tossed something, you know, and then complain, you know, they didn't want this. Well, you know, people.
I remember one girl, her parents made her come to this awful show at the Center for the Arts, and she was sitting there turned sideways pouting, you know, because she had to go see this show, and she was hating it. And I looked down and I saw her, and I just couldn't resist, and it was just a perfect shot. I threw a prize and hit her right in the head.
Heads up!
And she's like, looked at me like, how dare you? But then she started laughing, you know, and it's kind of a rude way to, yeah, well, there were no lawsuits. We didn't get sued.
I was the only one that knew that after the show was over and the lights went up, a lot of those prizes were lying between the rows of seats. And I would go up and down the rows of seats looking like sort of like a janitor and collecting, you know, gumdrops and eyeballs and toots and whistles and all kinds of stuff, and really go home with a pretty good bunch of stuff.
I never got anything. I mean, you know, not even a chiclet, nothing.
Oh, the funnest part for any of the M.T.Pockets shows for me, I like the games.
I had some games based on the program. My favorite one was Hot Seat, where I went out and meticulously taped winning or little numbers underneath everyone's seat in the theater. So one person would have the winning seat. In order to find the winning prize number, they had to all stand up and move around and look, and then it became chaos. People would go nuts, running all over the theater looking for seats that had the prize number until someone found it, and there would be shrieking and screaming.
Well, the programs are not just what's going to happen, they're catalogs, they're keepsakes. You know, they put a lot of thought and effort into them, and they're their own little memento of the event.
Well, every program was nice because Joel was real good about putting a trading card in there. And being a fan of trading cards, I always thought that was a nice touch. Because he put a lot of work into them. The trading cards, my gosh, you ended up with a couple hundred different ones, didn't you?
So turn with me now to the very last page of your program. You see the film clip from Gidget. If you will flip it up, there's about 10 that say one of two things. It should say you're a winner. So do I have any winners? Okay. The game is called Killerfish Attack. And in order to win your prize, you have just been attacked by a killerfish, you have to scream. That's a condition. If you don't scream, you don't win. Let's hear some screams. Very good. One witch finger is kind of boring. 2 witch fingers is alright, but too peaceful. 3 witch fingers, now you got a hand going. But if you have your deluxe witch finger kit, you have all 10 fingers. So I made the new M.T.Pockets Budget Concession hats, which probably fit even better than this one does. So if you come on down, I'm going to give away this limited number right now. Our concession stand is now open, and they do have a few of the M.T.Pockets Deluxe Choco Bars left. $1 at the concession stand. M.T.Pockets Budget Chewing Gum in cinnamon, and now new spearmint.
And then I think Joel had a really good idea when he incorporated the music, because again, these are people that you normally wouldn't go out and see, or you wouldn't be exposed to. It was always something different. It was never the same.
One thing that I totally loved about the M.T.Pockets things is the music. Joel is a fine musician. I don't know if he considers himself a fine musician.
One of the things that broke things up at the Escape Drive-In was I brought in music acts, and I tried to find the weirdest stuff I could find, or people that were unusual. And so in the middle of the show, which we call the intermission, we'd have a music act come out and perform, which is supposed to be when people can get up and move around so they can watch the music or they can leave.
We had Kevin Bobo, who did a wonderful, incredible thing. So it was real kind of a hit and miss. Some of the people I booked, and then when the ones Joel booked, I would be like, okay, well, great, Joel. I know they're going to be odd.
As the years went by, the lobster boy grew into a middle-aged man, and he grew bitter as the sideshow world closed up. And he went into retirement in Sarasota, and he became a raging, abusive alcoholic. And his wife could no longer tolerate it.
I remember I had known Keith Gist for many years under his real name, and I did not know he was a singer. I still don't, but he is a performer. And first time I went there, I think he was singing some, I suppose you could call it singing, I suppose you could call it a song. In the days of, post-Janis Joplin, anything goes. It had to do with a number of lines of bits of wisdom that sounded a little bit like Confucius and a little bit like very bad haiku poetry, accompanied by Sanderson with this weird-looking space hat off in the back of the stage trying to look like a solemn scientist, and guests would speak these lines with great solemnity and step back and let us ponder their deep and wonderful wisdom while the audience hooted and hollered, had a good time.
The performance that I did for M.T.Pockets was like one of the first of many that I started doing later on. I've always had a fascination with UFOs, and then just slamming UFO and cowboys together.
His first public appearance in what, 20 years?
Erickson says you're just a bunch of low-brow hooligans and he won't have anything more to do with you.
The audiences would generally be fairly small until Jim Erickson did a whole article, and M.T.Pockets was like one of the best bets of things, unknown things to go see. Man, we had a huge audience that night. It was great.
Thank you for coming. This is the biggest crowd we've ever had. Thanks. This is great. Once again, the fabulous budget table of fabulous prizes.
And of course, the prizes. God bless U.S. Toy.
And people would run up on the stage and go, "Oh man, this is so cool," and they'd be yelling and screaming. And
another carryover from the Escape Drive-In was the prize drawing. The prize drawing became the big part of the Escape Drive-In.
Your prize numbers are now going from this ashtray into the vat. A good story.
The problem with the prize drawing is that every time you give away a good prize, people expect the next show for you to give a better prize. So the problem with the better prize is that it gets more and more expensive. So at one of the shows, I gave away a small can, like one of those small cans of pork and beans, and people went nuts. So I said, okay, the next show I'll give away a big can of pork and beans, and that'll be the grand prize. It worked out, because the next time I tried that, just the audience went berserk. And then it became a tradition. It saved me the expense of coming up with something bigger and better, and it was just a blast to see people shrieking and going nuts over winning the can of pork and beans. That was the prize from then on.
The pork and beans can giveaway for the big prize. That was just so funny.
The grand prize, everybody thought, I remember seeing that for the first time, everybody thought, wow, it's going to be like a Walkman or some high-tech thing, you know, it's really fancy toy, and it's 3 pounds of pork and beans.
Yes, the M.T.Pockets tradition, the grand prize is the huge can of pork and beans.
And the crowd goes crazy, you know. Ah.
I don't know whether I ever won the can of beans, but that's a little, I mean, I live alone, you know, and a can of beans that size would be a little difficult for me to make any practical use of anyway.
I know I won the pork and beans one time.
I also never got the can of beans, but, you know, I think I should have gotten something, you know. I mean, as the critic, I'm not supposed to take things, but if it just falls into my lap, it's almost an act of God, you know.
It was great. It was a wonderful mix of entertainment of all sorts. You had your film, you had your performance art, you had music, and you had just the wild craziness kind of thrown in. It was excellent. Veritable super fun.
The general feeling, this is unique. This is not something that people, you know, all over the United States are seeing. This is a local product. and it was something of a privilege to see the M.T.Pockets Budget Film Festival. I always rather hoped that it would reach a wider audience, but then again, it would lose a bit of its uniqueness if it was broadcast nationwide or something like that. So it worked out any way you wanted to.
And I think a lot of what the Empty Pocket shows are is bringing back a modern twist on what the movie-going experience was.
It's a moment of history. It's kind of, you know, something that might not ever be captured again.
I like that people remember it still. I mean, I think that people want it and miss it and want more and more.
M.T.Pockets, man, it's a dangerous gig.
Don't know that our present situation indicates people took it seriously, or that they understand anything better than they did back in the old days. In light of that thought, it's a little frightening to contemplate the works of Sanderson. We haven't outgrown them yet.
Thank you.
And that's it. Thank you for coming.